Hey guys, we are covering week 3, which is Genesis chapter 30 through 50. Today we are running late. Today is actually Wednesday. We should have posted it Sunday or Monday, but Alex's dad had a stroke and a brain bleed and ended up basically having paralysis on his left side, and he is still in the hospital, and he will be going into rehab soon. He's getting better little by little, but it's taken a few days. But he came out of it pretty good. We're very blessed that we didn't lose him. And so it's put us a few days behind, but that's okay. So hopefully come Saturday night or Sunday, we will be doing week 4. But for right now, we would like to cover week 3. Do you want me to just... You don't want to do a summary since I end up asking a million questions.
Sure, just go through it. We're just going to go through it anyway. So I usually would do it like a brief summary, but the entire sort of video is just us going through it and summarizing it anyway. So we're going to not do that anymore if we're going to just go over it anyway. Just note that if you want to keep following along with us, we're going to be in the book of Job next week. It's going to be Job 1, or should I say this week since we're late. It's going to be Job 1 through 24 that you're going to need to read, and we're going to have a video on that when it comes this this Sunday or Monday.
Okay, so we start off with Jacob, and we realize that his life was marked by deception. I mean, many times in his story in the Bible, we see that he's trying to deceive someone, and he's being deceived also. So, I go on to list all the different children he bore from Leah, Rachel, Bilhah, and Zilpah. I can never say those names, but it goes into talking about all the different kids that was born. And she bore a second son, and Leah named him Asher, and we have an Asher, so I wanted to do a shout out to Karen and with Asher and Gideon. It's an amazing family that we have here in our ministry. So Leah had 6 pregnancies, right? 6 sons.
Boys.
Yeah, we don't know how many pregnancies, but 6 boys. Oh, well, we do know she bore him a daughter, Dinah.
And she was mentioned because of the significance of what happened to her.
Yes. So go ahead and explain to them what happened.
Well, so Dinah went to go visit her young lady friends, and while she was in the city, and remember, they're sort of foreigners in the Canaanite land. While she was in that city, someone rapes her, and then proceeds to demand or ask her family to get her to be his wife. And so her Jacob's sons hear about this, because this is their sister. 2 of them, Simeon and Levi, decide to trick them and murder all the men, and then take everybody else captive.
And the way they trick them is they tell them that, sure, we'll let her marry you, but you have to become part of our family. And in order for you to do that, that would mean that all the men in your family, or all the men of this village, will have to be circumcised. And so they waited till the last day, knowing that they were still down with the pain and all of that, and weren't able to get up and fight. They went in and murdered everyone. Reagan and I have talked about it. I don't know if that's fair. If I was the woman who's raped, I don't know that I would have disagreed on how they handled it, but
well, they definitely should have put to
unfair.
death. They should have done something to the man who raped and the man's immediate family. But they killed the entire village.
Yeah.
Now it could be that all of the village were related, like they were all.
Or
family.
they all knew about it and just didn't even care.
So I don't know all the circumstances, but it's definitely wrong. You see that from the context of the story, that they were regarded later when he gives a prophecy that these 2 are bloodthirsty, is what he calls them in his prophecy.
Yeah.
And so
That's one of the things that I was going to talk to you about. Like, I know it said blessings, but it seemed like more like he was cursing 2 or 3 of them, didn't it?
Yeah, so he was just declaring over them what they would be like in the future is the idea.
So basically during the biblical time when they would go ahead and give the blessing at their deathbed, it wasn't really a blessing, it was a prophecy, right?
Yes, but it could also be something that they wanted specifically for themselves, because Esau tried to get that blessing that Jacob got. So it's a mixture of both, depending on who you are and what circumstances you're in. But I think there's a difference between the blessing and what Jacob does for his kids later, or Israel does for his kids later. When he says, and when we get there, I think I'll point it out, but when he says, I'm going to tell you what will happen in the end of days, is what he says.
So, something I had forgotten, or, I mean, because it's been a while since I've read through the Bible, was that for some reason I was thinking Laban wasn't really that bad of a guy, even though he did deceive Jacob. I always thought, well, that's good on him because he, deceived his own brother and his father and all of that. But then I just read, and I had forgotten about it, that he cheated Jacob not just one time, but 10 times he changed his wages. So he was cheating him, and it wasn't just one time he cheated him, it was like 10 times he cheated him.
And the number 10 is often used to mean like a bunch. Like, it would be like how we say there were thousands upon thousands without meaning they were actually. Like, it's just a way of Jacob saying, you've changed my wages a lot.
And then we see that Jacob is done, and he goes over all the speckled lambs and the streaked lambs and all that, the spotted lambs, whatever. And he ends up, after how many ever years that is, that he makes the deal with him. I want to say it's like 10 more years. Wait, I don't know. I'll see. I wrote it down later. But anyway, they go to leave, and we find out that Rachel takes Laban's idols, takes her father's idols, these idols that they worship, which could have been made of gold or silver or something expensive and worth something, and maybe she just wanted them, in case of hard times, I don't know. But more than likely, what you and I talked about was that she probably still worshipped those gods. I'm not even sure if she worshipped our God, but even if she did, I think she still worshipped the other gods and wanted to take those idols with her to continue the practice of worshiping. And then, of course, Laban didn't want to let go of them because he still worshipped those gods also. And it just kind of, I noticed that even though Leah is the one that's treated horribly, she's the one that follows our God.
Where does it say that?
I don't know, but I was thinking that doesn't she eventually start to follow? I think she becomes a follower later.
I think everyone becomes a follower.
I don't know about
because
Rachel.
I think Jacob makes everyone get rid of their idols.
I know that he forces them to follow, but
doesn't mean necessarily internally that they follow him, but
does Rachel worship our God? I just don't see it. I don't remember, but
I think after a certain point you begin to realize that it's mostly the patriarchs themselves that start turning to Yahweh first, and when the patriarch starts turning to Yahweh, the rest of the family tend to follow, or at least the wives. The children don't always, because sometimes you'll hear them say the God of my father or the God of that dude, or things like that. It's really interesting.
So Jacob leaves. He flees from Laban. And Laban follows him and pursues him for like 7 days till he finds him. And then we read the story how Rachel's hiding them idols, and she sits on them and says, I'm on my period and I can't move. And I guess
it would be dishonorable in that culture too.
Yes, for her to even get up or move or something.
Well, for her to be bleeding in his presence like that.
Yeah.
If she didn't have it stopped up in some way.
Ew, don't say it that way. But anyway, remember I said later on I had wrote down what Jacob had been with Laban for 20 years. So I wrote down how long he had been there. So he had been there 20 years, remember? 7 for who he thought was Rachel, but it turned out to be Laban. Leah. And then 7 more for Rachel, so that's 14. And then all of the speckled and spotted and all those sheep, the whole deal that he made that he could leave with whatever he...
And then he immediately took all the good sheep and put them with his son so that way he wouldn't have it. And then Jacob's like, God's got this. And he just starts doing this stuff where they'll get near each other and then they all mate and have these.
But, okay, so, and that took 6 years. He took 6 years of breeding his sheep to get him a very wealthy amount, right? And he did that, and God blessed him and made all those sheep. But I was reading something the other day, and I'm not sure, but I want to say that it was actually posted by somebody from our church. But it's how, it goes into talking about how he does it. Like, he puts some sort of piece of a tree.
So I think that that's more about getting them to come there and getting them aroused to mate.
You think?
So he puts that stuff out there only when the strong sheep are there. The strong of the flock, so that way his speckled sheep will be strong. That wood doesn't make them speckled.
Well,
it's a supernatural act of God.
It's something about a gene, that it affects the gene in those types of animals. I put it on my Facebook page, and I can't remember. I should have looked at it before we started the video, but it really does. It's in the Bible, but then science proved it. I
don't know how Jacob would have known that. About their genetics.
I'm guessing God told him or just told him to go do that because science does reaffirm that something in that, what was it? A piece of wood?
It was a type of wood.
Yeah. Something in that particular wood affects the genes in what, goats or cows or what was it?
I don't know.
I think it was goats. What was it? Sheep? It was his sheep that it changed them.
It was sheep and goats, and it was speckled sheep, and he could keep the black. Wait, it was speckled goats. One of them was speckled.
He could keep anything that was spotted.
And anything that was black if it was a goat. So there's 2 different animals he could keep. So the way that it would have to affect both goats and sheep for that hypothesis to be true. I think it's just a plant that when you put it near them, the aroma of it makes them aroused, so they have sex more. Because then, when he puts it out when the strong are out there, so that way the strong will have kids, and he trusts in the Lord to give him what he needs, and then the Lord makes all of them speckled and spotted. Because later on, God tells him, "I gave you all of the sheep."
Right. That's what I'm telling you. The thing that he does is actually been proven by science that it does change genes or something. I put it on my Facebook page because it was so unique. And someone, I think from our church, posted it on how that works because I was wondering why he did that. So that God told him because he would have never had. They weren't scientists back then. He would have never have known that. But whatever's in that type of wood does something. Okay. I need to look that up again. But it was really neat. Maybe someone that's watching is one of the ones that posted it or read it. So you can comment below and tell us what it is that, and I'll look it back up too. It was on my Facebook page, but so Laban tells them, okay, you can, because he doesn't find the idols, so he goes, okay, so you can take my daughters. You cannot mistreat them, and you cannot take other wives. And I don't even understand why he's saying that because he already has taken his daughters and their servants. So is he saying? That's enough. You can't take any more after that, and why? What
he doesn't want anyone outside of his family being a part of that line. And
there were slaves.
He doesn't. Well, they were bought into the family.
So it's considered his family.
The children they had were considered the children of Rachel and Leah. Remember? That's how this.
Yeah, but they're slaves, so.
Yes, ma'am. But they're bought into the family.
I know. So weird.
So, he also says, you're running away with my daughters, and you're running away with my livestock, as if they're still his.
And he said, my grandchildren.
And my grandchildren. He's arrogant and claims ownership over these after they've married into Jacob's family.
Yeah, I noticed that.
And after he made a deal where the dude gets those sheep and those animals fair and square, and God just blessed him in that. So, he seems to be very deluded and quite selfish.
Well, and he also basically, doesn't he say anything after that can be your children? Right? After you leave this land, did he say that?
You're thinking of later when Jacob adopts Manasseh and Ephraim. And then he says anyone after that will be a part of the brothers' tribe.
You're right.
But one more thing real quick. Laban also, I think, says they aren't to see each other ever again. Like, I won't come to you and you won't come to me, to harm each other, sorry. So they make an oath to not ever mess with each other again.
Right.
I guess that doesn't mean they never saw each other again. It just means that they were never going to, act out of anger on what they've done to each other.
Okay, so now we hear the story about how Jacob decides, because he's finally going back to his... Where's he going back to? I forgot. It's
to the land of Canaan.
Canaan. So he's going back to Canaan, and he knows that he'll end up running into Esau. So he's got a plan. He's going to give him 200...
Actually, someone tells him Esau's coming to you with 400 men. A messenger comes.
Okay. But I thought he already had figured that out. I thought this was the...
Well, it's more the Esau's coming to you with 400 men that he's scared about. It sounds like an army.
But he already knew, so he already had a plan in before he even finds out Esau's coming with 400 men. So he had a plan, and his plan was, I'm going to give him 200 female goats, 20 male goats, 200 ewes, 20 rams, 30 milk camels with their young, 40 cows, 10 bulls, 20 female donkeys, and 10 male donkeys. And it's talking about he took his 2 wives, his 2 slave women, and 11 sons. And you know what made me very disturbed? And every time I read the story over the years, I still get disturbed about this. Is because it shows
them.
No, it shows favoritism in how he ranked them.
That's what I'm saying. He orders them so that way Esau will attack someone first.
Yes, and so he puts the one he doesn't like.
He puts the slave and their children first.
He puts the slave people up front.
Then
with
he
their
puts
kids.
Leah. Sorry.
He puts the slave women and their children up front, so that if Esau's mad and they all come straight in to kill, they'll kill them first. And then if they're still mad, hey, Leah and her kids are up in the middle. And maybe by then he won't be mad, and so Rachel and his 2 sons will be safe. And that is so horrible. Every time I read that story, I'm just like, I would be so heartbroken if I was Leah or those slave people. I mean, I know, women were not treated well back then, but just what a slap in the face.
No, he really did love Rachel.
No, I said Leah and those slave women. That's horrible.
Oh, it's horrible for them. But there is some weird practicality to it, because if you see the people in front of you dying, it means it gives you time to run. But because if you place them all equally next to each other...
I understand that. That's the sad part about this story. Is we knew that was coming, and once he said go up there to the slave women, they knew why. They knew why, because we are the least loved.
Mm-hmm.
And then
he goes ahead of them, though. He goes ahead of all of them and talks to Esau first. So he puts himself first in case if he gets killed, then that means.
Does he? Because I thought he stayed back.
No, he walks up. He goes up and he talks to Esau.
Okay.
Otherwise, he'd be in the back rank with Rachel. And
yeah.
I'm pretty sure that's the way. I have to go look at it.
Esau runs and meets him and hugs and kisses him. So he's literally, and they weep because it has been so many years, and they are brothers, and they have grown. And Jacob knows what it feels like to be deceived. So I'm sure he's been really struggling with the guilt all those years. So then, of course,
Esau's got a small army.
At this time, has a man wrestled with Jacob till daybreak and dislocated his hip. And that is when that God renamed Jacob into Israel.
What's really significant about that, and I think that this is an example of God appearing in a human form, not just an angel of the Lord, or it could be Christ Jesus, is after that encounter, he asks his name. And you only ask the name, and he tells him to bless him before you let him go. which means he's got an understanding that something's really special about this person. And then when he asks his name, the response is, "Why do you ask my name?" And then he renames him, which indicates ownership, and that's what God does. It's what he did with Abraham, and he's doing it with Jacob now, renaming him to Israel, the one who wrestles with God. And so then after that, he makes a altar and names it, I have seen the face of God. Well, he says, I have seen the face of God and lived. So he realized, and the scripture implies, that whatever was wrestling him was God who took on some sort of form, who appeared to him.
A man's form.
Which sounds like Jesus.
And so Alex is reading through the Bible with us, and we're so proud of him because he is always working, and he never can find time to just sit still and read a lot. And when he does, he just falls asleep. So he's never made it through the whole Bible. And he's doing really good this time. And so he's really like excited about different things. He'll say like, "Oh, did you know that they did this?" or whatever. And the one thing in this week's that excited him was, it says, if the Israelites don't eat the thigh muscle that is at the hip socket to this day. And he's like, "Did you know they still don't eat the muscle at the hip socket because of that story?"
They still don't to our day too?
I don't know. It says Israelites don't eat the thigh muscle that is at the hip socket. Yeah, I know, but I'm just saying, like, he was so excited about that. He's like, "Did you know they don't even eat that?" And I'm like, I know. It's kind of like, I don't know, paying homage to what
to
happened or something. Yeah. And then I put a question mark like Jacob seen God. So, you know, he wrestled with this person. That was God. We're not supposed to be able to see God face to face. So when he takes on a human form, we can see him, right?
You're not seeing his real self.
Okay.
Well, also, there's implication that God has mercy on you. Because remember when Isaiah sees God in his throne room, he says, "Woe is me, for I'm an unclean man with unclean lips, and I live amongst a people of an unclean people." And God sends an angel to take this charcoal, this burning ember, and purify him with it. So the idea is, you do need to be holy to be in my presence. You do need to be like me. Otherwise, I will destroy you. But there's this mercy in that he provides the way that Isaiah can be near him. And I think the same is going on here, where he is showing mercy and grace towards Jacob in coming down and interacting with him like this. And then renaming him so that way he knows who he's supposed to be. And it's what the nation after him is called.
Yeah. So it's talking about how Jacob bowed to the ground 7 times. I always joke, and I teach all the kids here, there are like common numbers, famous numbers. They're like the best numbers of the Bible. They're usually like 3, 7, 10, 12, 40. I think they're the ones that they use all the time. And of course 7 is used constantly. So anyway, and then I wrote about what we were just talking about, the slaves first, and Leah and her children next, and then Rachel and Joseph last. So Benjamin wasn't born by this point. I said earlier 2 children, but it says Rachel and Joseph. But you and I talked about how funny it was that once again Jacob deceives Esau, because Esau says, "Come, follow me," and he says, "Oh no, I've got animals.
Too much to deal with,
I've got animals that could be sick. The herd will die if we're driven hard, and so we're going to continue on a slow pace, and we'll meet you there." Like, is it Sir? Is that the name of that place?
I don't know.
Seir.
Oh, Seir.
Seir. So we'll meet you at Seir, but he doesn't. He like literally goes to Sukkoth. And you and I talked about that. It's like he just deceived him. Like he's like, "Oh, go on," and then I'm like, "Let's go the other way. Let's get away from him in case he's still mad about this, and there's an ambush waiting for us. I mean, it's a good strategy too, because I don't know if I would trusted him either back in those days. Okay, he's been deceived. I've taken everything from him. I'm not gonna fall for this if he's got an ambush waiting for us up there. So I don't blame him, but once again, he's deceiving people. And I love how at day 2 when it starts, it's talking about that the whole problem here is a father loving one child more than his others. I mean, everything that happens throughout all this during the week, it is all stemmed from that.
Yep, it's favoritism.
Like, here's Jacob's dad. He likes Esau more than Jacob. Here's Jacob. He likes Joseph more than the rest of his sons. I mean, did he not learn anything?
Seems like Joseph did.
Joseph turns out to... I know.
He's
when
like
I was reading the
kids.
story about Joseph, I'm like, oh my gosh, he turns out to be an amazing man. Not a deceiver like his father. Not a deceiver like his mother. Because his mother was helped him deceive Esau. Oh.
No, his grandmother. Joseph's grandmother.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Okay.
I think at that point, maybe it finally dug into Jacob's head.
Well, eventually,
Like,
and I think that's when
you can't do this, but he still favorites Joseph.
Yeah, but I think he starts, cleaning up his act. I think he just gets to the point where he's not a deceiver, not really known as a deceiver.
Definitely
anymore.
still shows favoritism, though.
Oh, definitely. Even at the end, like, even with Benjamin, he's like, nope, I'm not letting him go. Like, I'll let all you kids go, but he's not going anywhere. Like, he's my favorite. So here's the thing that you and I were discussing at the last small group at Tracy and Mike's with John Ballard about the mother. I thought it was Rebecca's mother, but it turned out to be who?
Her nurse. It was the person who had raised her, so now she was her. She would have been a slave that attends her now, rather than a nurse now. But
so it was Rebecca's nurse.
Which was probably a slave. But remember that in this time period, slavery, unless you were captured during war, the only reason you were really enslaved legally was because you had debt and you needed to sell yourself to pay it off.
Okay, so we know that. Oh, so this was when Dinah is raped, and the brothers are like, Jacob did nothing.
Yeah, Jacob did nothing.
He was not a great father.
No.
Like anyway.
That's why I said Jacob should have did something, but
he didn't.
His sons also went way too far.
So Jacob didn't do anything, and then the sons went too far. But they said, and I love the fact they said, should he treat our sister like a prostitute? Like, any father should have said, no, we need to do something, but he was just like worried about his...
Well, it's too late now, because they already did it at that point.
Okay, so, we know that Jacob had 12 sons, so that's the 12 tribes of Israel.
Actually, 2 of those are Manasseh and Ephraim, which are Joseph's sons. Yeah. Because Jacob adopts them as his own at the end.
That's true. I forgot about that.
Because Joseph and Levi become the priestly line, and they don't get any land. So.
Oh, well, that's terrible.
They don't get land. They're required. The 12 tribes are required to tithe to them so that they can survive, and they get the temple duties and stuff. Okay.
So during this time, Reuben's caught sleeping with Jacob's concubine, Bilhah.
Ooh, this is something I saw. Jacob never tells them. I don't think Jacob ever told them that he knew.
He just waits.
He waits till the end when you see that blessing.
Are you sure? How did we know that?
Because of the way the grammar is structured. When he says, he slept on my bed in that curse, or the prophetic announcement, it's like an emphatic statement where you're like revealing something. It could be not. It could just not be the case.
Do you think it just happened once, or was it an affair?
But either way, the passage doesn't say he does anything at the moment.
No, he doesn't
It says
do anything about it.
He knows of it. He knows of it. It says that he knows.
But he could have said, "I know what happened. Don't do that again," and made sure that he didn't do it again.
But see, he was waiting to maybe see if Reuben would stop on his own, out of his own.
So it was probably an affair then. In other words, it happened more than once. Reuben was married, right, at the time?
Even if he was, he shouldn't have been doing that with his father's wife.
Well, no, I'm just saying he was married, and then his father. This is his concubine. So you'd think they would make the right choices, and it would just like be a one-time thing. But it might have been an affair.
Could be. There's nothing in the text to tell us that. It just says that Reuben slept with his father's wife or his father's concubine, and Jacob learns about it and doesn't do a single thing right now. Just says he becomes aware of it.
He just does nothing about anything, does he?
See,
he's just very passive.
But then at the end, I think he like throws it out there.
Yeah. Okay, so Esau is also named Edom. Is that how you say it? Edom. And he becomes the father of the Edomites.
They are a perpetual thorn in Israel's side.
Really?
Jacob becomes Israel. Esau is also called Edom.
Okay. Isaac lived 180 years, and Esau and Jacob buried him.
I wonder how that went. Why'd you run away to a different city, brother?
We know that Esau married those Canaanite women, the Hittites wives.
And Ishmael's daughter. It mentions her.
Yeah, but I'm saying he married those Hittite wives, which were Canaanites, right? And later they talk about it, but they don't really mention the Canaanite women. Do we really know what happened to them?
Well, when it goes over Esau's genealogy, it mentions
one of them, right?
I think it mentions the.
But we don't really hear about them.
The sons of each of them.
It does, but we don't. Yeah, the sons.
Oh yeah, you don't hear anything about who they are, other than the fact that they weren't from their family. They were Canaanites, and that they irritated the crap out of their parents.
So we know that when Esau and Jacob were leaving, Esau was going back to Seir. And so he is the father of the Edomites, and they lived in the mountains of Seir. So we know that. And then Jacob was in Canaan, right?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. I noticed that in all of this, it said Anah, A-N-A-H. Anah was the one who found the hot springs in the wilderness. I don't know what that means.
Well, they would. It's just for the people who lived during that time.
Yeah. He found a hot springs in the wilderness while he was pasturing the donkeys.
It could be the case that it was a well-known hot spring that they knew about, and they're like, "Oh, look, yeah," and he's the one that found that hot spring out there, guys.
So.
Which does lend historical credibility because they're mentioning things that they know about. For any skeptics out there.
Then we get into the story of Joseph, and this is always such a fun story, but here's one thing that I was noticing this time I read through it. Nowhere in my Bible does it say it's a coat of many colors. It says it's a robe.
It's just a beautiful robe.
Beautiful robe. So where do we get the coat of many colors?
There was a play.
So, yeah, but why do people still say that?
They took the underlying Hebrew word and they basically exaggerated it.
So all this time,
it was probably a coat that was colored.
Yeah.
But not one where you had a bunch of colors. So they wouldn't usually dye clothes, but they did have dyes.
Yeah.
But they wouldn't be able to do like rainbow dye.
No.
That didn't exist. So it was probably a coat that was dyed.
Well, there's no rainbow dye. What you meant was they
dye
back then they would have dyed it different. Like the one arm was colored.
They would have to do it that way.
Another arm was colored. And what was her name? She was someone who dyed clothes. What was her name?
Does it
later on in the New Testament?
Read the passage where it talks about the cloak, the robe.
I don't know. It talks about it 2 or 3 different times that I read, and I was like, okay, nowhere is it saying a coat of many colors. But anyway, so Joseph is 17 years old when tending the sheep with his brothers. And at 17 years old, this is when they decide, we're done with him. Because
No, he made a long-sleeved robe for him.
Yeah. Nowhere does it say those colors.
Didn't even say anything about colors.
Yeah. It was just a long robe.
Yep.
Alright.
So it was just a nicer robe.
So we know that he's already the Joseph, bless his heart, he was just immature. He really was, because he turns out to be such a great guy.
I think he brings bad reports about his brothers.
Yeah, but I just think he was immature, wanting to be, his father's favorite, which he already was, and he comes and says stuff to them. I mean, I can't see a man with his character, and he had such good character in Egypt, such good character, that would do that to be spiteful. I just think he wasn't very smart. He was immature, probably, to come in there and say, y'all are going to bow down to me. Like, anybody else would have known that's not going to go over well. But he just comes right in and blurts that out.
True.
And even his father is kind of confused, like, kind of taken back.
He's not angry, but he does challenge him, and then it says he keeps it in mind.
Yeah.
And then it says his brothers become even more jealous and more angry. I think it says that he brings bad reports about his brothers. I think he's just telling his dad, like, hey, they're not doing this right. I think he's legitimately, but he would have seen, the tattletale, the snitch, to their brothers, and they would have hated him.
So they're very jealous of him.
And if you notice, they're not good character people. So they probably had some pretty bad reports coming back.
So I wrote, Jacob made a coat, or it was a robe, that was long-sleeved for Joseph. That's all it says, a long-sleeved robe. Mm-hmm. It doesn't say anything about colors. And then he's talking, the Bible tells us why he loves Joseph more than the others. Jacob loved Joseph more than his other sons because he was born in his old age to Rachel, the woman he loved. So
his wife's son.
Yeah.
So that's why also Benjamin, which is her other kid, before she dies.
He loves him just as much. Yeah. All right.
Actually, we do see some signs of issues with Joseph too.
Like
he has favoritism towards Benjamin.
Well, of course he does. That's his only full brother.
I know, but that is favoritism.
It's really not. You would do the same thing. Anybody would do that.
I thought it more of he didn't try to kill me. So I'm not going to give them good stuff. I'm going to give him the best stuff.
No, it's because that's his full brother. That's his full-blooded brother. So especially the way blood worked back in those days. I mean, they put a lot of stock in that. So yeah, Benjamin would have been amazing. And it does say that it talks about how he gave him 5 changes of clothes when he gave his other brothers 1. So yeah. So I do love the fact that they're in Shechem, I think's how, and Jacob tells Joseph to go check on them. And it's really Jacob's fault that he gets in trouble all the time with his brothers because he's check on them. Yeah, he's having them be the snitch. Can't be good. But then they had moved on to Dothan, and here he comes there. Oh my gosh, they couldn't stand him. They see him coming, they're like, here comes the little snitch.
Are you ready to kill him?
Get stitches and end up in ditches. It said the brothers wanted to kill Joseph, but Reuben talked them into just throwing him in a pit. Now, Reuben is the oldest.
He's the one who slept with his father's concubine.
Yeah, he's the oldest brother. And he said, throw him in this empty pit that didn't have water in it. Because, he wants to come back later and save him. Because he just can't bring himself to do that. So that's great that Reuben is like
it's that. Or his father did figure out and made known that he knew about what he did with his concubine. He was trying to get favor back by saving his favorite son.
I did not think about that. I guarantee that's probably what it was.
It's Dad doesn't like me much right now, so maybe I can get on his good side if I save his son.
They were going to kill him, but I saved him. All right, and then Judah, they decide that they're going to kill him, and Judah talks him into not killing him, but to sell him into slavery, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they look out, they see a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead.
Mm-hmm.
And
they would have only been 2 or 3 generations removed, too. Because remember,
that's true.
Esau has one of Ishmael's daughters as his wife.
Mm-hmm. So there's camels carrying aromatic gum, balsam, and resin, and they're going down to Egypt. And they see them, and they sell Joseph to them for 20 pieces of silver. How much did Delilah get for Samson?
Oh, I don't know about Delilah.
Was it 30?
Judas was 30.
And Delilah got 30.
And Elijah.
No, she might have got more than that.
And I think Delilah, they didn't tell us. Maybe they did tell us the exact amount, but...
Okay, Google. Oh no, did that set the camera off? Do you want to go look?
Yeah, I'll go check for a quick sec.
I bet I did.
Postpone.
So I was just going to see how much pieces of silver that Delilah got. So I need to look that up. How much Delilah got, how much did Judas get, and how much did the brothers get? Mm-hmm. I know the brothers got 20, Judas got 30. I don't remember how much Delilah got.
I don't either.
That's going
to
bug me.
Doesn't matter right now.
Well, it does. It's bugging me.
Something interesting is, under the Old Testament law, they would have been put to death for that.
For what?
For kidnapping someone and selling them into slavery.
Oh, yeah. Good enough. We should still do that.
Mm-hmm.
So they dipped Joseph's robe in goat's blood and made Jacob believe he was dead.
Mm-hmm. They deceived their father.
I mean, it's hard for me to believe that these people, that these guys that would have killed their own brother, it's just hard for me to believe that they ever turn out to be anything decent.
Why do you think God says that you're a stiff-necked people?
So Jacob mourned for many days and no one could comfort him. And I think that's what broke them. I think seeing their dad that distraught for that long really did kind of break them some, to the point where I think they had some guilt. I can't be sure, but I was hoping.
You see later where I believe it's Judah.
Judah's firstborn is evil.
No,
and God kills him.
It's Judah where... Isn't he the one that offers to take the place of Benjamin?
Later,
or is it Reuben?
I don't know. We'll get there. I wrote it down. But Judah's firstborn is evil.
God kills him, and then the next dude gets killed too.
Yeah. So is his oldest. He's evil. God said dead. His next one is Onan. He's evil too, so the Lord puts him to death too. I mean, it just goes straight. God killed him. I just would not mess with God. I mean, I just don't know why people don't have a fear of the Lord anymore. Because read the Old Testament.
And then Judah got scared to give his other son to the...
Yeah. But,
he was afraid he was afraid that he
I would have been scared of God because he eventually cheats her again and doesn't give his son to her at all.
And then she prostitutes herself with him.
Yep.
To try to get it all paid back. And he's like, can't really do anything to her.
No. Because he knows
I should have gave my son to her in the first
God will kill me too because I did not treat her fairly. I love the fact that it points out that Joseph was well built and handsome. So the Potiphar's wife is after him. She's got it bad. And it's really sad. I don't know. Some people are just, they have no... I mean, I guess it wasn't like they got a Holy Spirit or anything to teach them or convict them. So.
They have their conscience.
Well, I don't think that she's
Which
listening. I think there's something going a little bit wonkier than her conscience, and, that's lust and all kinds of stuff.
Of course.
But it also said not only did God make him handsome and well built, but he was always successful thanks to the Lord. It says that his success was from the Lord. And then we go through the story of the cupbearer and the baker and how Joseph tells them what their dreams mean. And he's in the dungeon at Potiphar's house. They keep saying prison, but it's actually a dungeon in Potiphar's house.
So Potiphar is the captain of the guard. Mm-hmm. And his prison, or dungeon, is where they would keep the Pharaoh's prisoners.
Right.
So you had to do something pretty significant to get put there. Either against Pharaoh or one of Pharaoh's higher-ups.
Yeah.
Which is why...
It doesn't tell us what the cupbearer and the baker do. It just tells us that the cupbearer was forgiven and the baker was killed.
Mm-hmm.
So the cupbearer's dream turns out to be a positive dream. The baker's turns out to be a death dream. And he's hung. And Joseph tells the cupbearer, please don't forget me. Please tell Pharaoh about me, that I'm here. I'm rotting in this dungeon down here. And he forgets him for like 2 years. So 2 years Joseph is in this prison or the dungeon. And only until Pharaoh starts having the dreams about the famine that they go, oh, I remember there's this dude that's in the dungeon. He can tell you what your dreams mean. And they finally go and get Joseph. And I think it's really funny because they go into a length of, or at least to include that Joseph went and got cleaned up. Like he took a bath and I forgot what all they said.
Shaved him.
Like he got a shave and he shaved, changed clothes before he went to Pharaoh. Like
gotta be presentable.
Yeah, like you.
So actually, he probably shaved all his hair off.
Oh yeah.
They like being bald.
And remember, that's probably why his family
him.
didn't recognize him because he's bald, darker. Probably been out in the sun all the time.
I don't know about being in a dungeon, but yeah, after he was out of the dungeon.
No, I'm talking about after, which by the time his family gets there, it's been a couple of years.
It's true, you're right.
And so here he is, bald-headed. He's probably got tattoos. Mm-hmm. Like they tattooed their makeup.
Those chin things.
Yeah. But remember they tattooed their makeup, didn't they? The Egyptians. Did. And then they wore the big... So he probably looked nothing like what... Because I used to think, how did they not recognize him?
He would be in Egyptian clothes.
And he would be speaking Egyptian, probably, because they would have recognized his voice otherwise.
Correct. It says he has a translator in between him and his brothers.
So they're
Even
not
though he knows Hebrew.
Yeah, he's not going to say it because if he starts speaking Hebrew, they're going to realize who he is because they'll recognize the sound of his voice.
And see, he's testing them at that point.
It's so cool how God does everything. Like, you just sit here and think, how would they not know? Like, this is a lie. But the Bible is so honest with everything. They tell the good and the bad of everybody's life, and that's so amazing. Like, you have to piece it together of how they didn't know their brother. He would have looked so, like, bald and had,
clothes,
yeah, and a different language.
Be speaking a different language. Dude, he would look like an Egyptian.
Because he was married to an Egyptian woman. That's another thing. Everybody's always like, oh yeah, like as far as racist people, like there's no mixing of nationalities, and yet you have Moses who's married to an Ethiopian woman. You have Joseph who was married to an Egyptian woman. Like, these are not like complected people. So he would have been married to this person who taught him Egyptian. All right, and her name was...
He would have known Egyptian.
Would he?
He's been there for a long time.
Well, no, but he got fluent when he married somebody. Because I don't know that he was fluent before then.
They put him in charge of all of his stuff. You have to have
Oh, he had been there. I keep thinking it's 2 years, but he'd been there all those years before, right?
Mm-hmm. And Potiphar
How many years?
Potiphar put him in charge of his household. You don't do that if they don't know the language.
So, how many years had he been there before?
I don't know. He's 39 at some point. It mentions that he's 39 at some point, and I can't remember
what he's... 30 years old when he began to work for Pharaoh.
I think he was 39 when Jacob comes.
So it's been 9 years. He wasn't 30 when he was 17 when he went there. So you do the math. What is that, like 17 years he's been there?
Been 22. Yes.
He's 30 years old.
At 30, he'd be 13. 13 years he was there.
Okay. So, yeah, you're right. He would have learned the language in 13 years.
He learned the language in 1 year, probably. He'd be forced to, or otherwise be beat as a slave.
So his wife has this big, long Egyptian name. And I guess this is her Hebrew name. Asenath. Asenath. But the Egyptian name that's her name, Asenath, and the Egyptian name they gave Joseph was this big, long... I cannot say that.
Well, I mean, I guess to the Egyptians he would have went by that.
But I can't say that.
Yeah, I don't bother to use the Egyptian name for Joseph. They only briefly mention it because they're trying to show that the Egyptians are trying to acclimate him to their culture.
So he was well-built, handsome, successful, and then it tells us he was wise. Like, he had it going on. Like, he had everything. God blessed him and left nothing out, did he? Like, he gave him everything, and that's so amazing. So he tells them how to take a fifth of all the crops during the 7 years of abundance, store them all up, because then there's going to be 7 years of famine. So he does that. And then we know that during that time, all of Egypt is out of food. So here...
And even the lands around Egypt, too.
Yeah, but all the Egyptians have no food. And any of the land right around have no food. So they all began to sell everything to Pharaoh. And he ends up owning them, their land, and them.
Yes, ma'am.
As slaves.
Bondservants. Yes, ma'am. Remember, this kind of slavery is a bit different than antebellum slavery. They sold themselves. You can read it.
Yeah.
They're like,
they offered
take us
themselves.
as your slaves.
Yeah. Because as slaves, they would have been fed.
They would have to have been.
Yeah.
If you become someone's slave, you have to take care of them.
Yeah. So, I can't blame them. I'm hungry. I'm going to say, you take me as a slave.
And they even say, you saved our lives.
Yeah. I thought they would be mad at Joseph, but they actually come to him and say, you saved us. You know, basically, thank you. We're alive because of you. But what I kept thinking of the whole thing is, they took a fifth of all the crops. Like, of the people's, too.
Because they knew the famine was coming.
Yeah, but shouldn't those people get a fifth of their crops back?
Well, they got way more than that, probably.
Before that? No, I doubt it.
Oh, no, before that, once the famine started.
Well, that's what I'm saying. You're saying that after that?
Yeah, they ran out of that fifth.
Oh.
I would have bet that each person's fifth ran out real fast.
Okay.
So they would have to come keep getting it. Plus, not everyone would have farmed. Remember, some people would be doing blacksmithing, some people would be doing leatherworking, some people would be doing manual labor. So it's just a fifth of the farming.
Yeah. So, we know that Joseph was second in command under the Pharaoh of Egypt. So, like, he was the big dog. There was Pharaoh, then Joseph.
That's why his family gets fed for free and they don't become slaves.
Exactly.
They live in the land of Goshen until a Pharaoh that doesn't know Joseph comes along and enslaves them.
Yeah. And that's where the slaves during the whole Exodus story comes from, is when the other Pharaoh comes in and makes them slaves. But up until then, they're free because they're part of Joseph's family.
They're living in the land of Goshen.
So he takes all this excess food and he stores it in the cities. And it's beyond measure. Like the Bible says that it is more than the sand of the sea. That is beyond... They stopped measuring it. It was beyond measurable.
Yes, ma'am. It just means that they couldn't measure it anymore. It doesn't mean that there was actually more than the sand of the sea.
I know, but they're just using this and saying, this is... We don't know how much we've...
There was a lot.
Yeah. So Asenath gives Joseph two sons, Manasseh, and Ephraim. Right?
Yes, ma'am.
So there's famine in every land, and everybody's like, hey, there's grain in Egypt. Let's go. And that includes the brothers that sell Joseph into slavery to Egypt. And Jacob tells them, you need to go to Egypt or we're going to die. Go down there so we will live and not die. So 10 of Joseph's brothers go down to buy grain. But Jacob will not let his beloved Benjamin go with them. Alright. So they get there, and Joseph knows who they are immediately. And what happens?
He starts testing them.
Yeah.
I think he's trying to figure out if they've changed.
He is. You can tell. He just wants to know what their character's like now.
And he wants to know about his family, obviously.
Yeah.
Like, he's like, he grills them about his dad. Like, is your father still alive? Yeah. How's your brother?
So he accuses them of being spies, and he keeps them in prison for 3 days. And then he says, okay, I'm going to let you go back. But you're going to bring your youngest brother back here.
To show that you're not spies.
Yeah. And then they get home, and Jacob was like, nuh-uh, we're not doing that. So they wait until the food runs out again. And then Jacob's...
That means they left one of their brothers there, by the way.
Yes, they left Simon. Is it Simeon? They left Simeon there.
He was taking care of him, though. You know that.
Well, yeah, but still, he was in prison. That's so mean.
He would have been stuck in the house.
I wonder how long it took for their food to run out. Probably a few months that they left Simeon in a prison. That's ridiculous. Like, I know he don't like me, but he just gonna leave me here? very disturbed when I was reading that. I was like, they just left him there. Like, they're just staying there.
Well, they were planning on going back, but Jacob said
they
no.
were, but Jacob said no. And I'm like, what? How long did they wait? It had to have been a while.
It'd be at least a few weeks. At least.
Oh, no. I'd say it's a few months because when he says, now you need to go back, they're like, what? We need to rush then. Like, in other words, they already know we wasn't planning on coming back. Like, it's obvious because it's probably been months by this time. And so he was like, well, I'm not giving you Benjamin. And they're like, you have to. Like, we can't go back. He said we can't even stand before him without Benjamin. And you're going to die, and Benjamin's going to die if we don't go back and get food. So he caves. But I put this question mark. What's that? Simeon was held back in Egypt. I put a question mark like, what the heck?
He would have been well taken care of. He just couldn't leave the house.
So he was at the house?
He was basically under
no,
house
he's
arrest.
probably in the dungeon.
He would not have let his brother stay in a dungeon.
Oh, wow. They threw him in a hole. I bet he was in the dungeon.
No, they would have. He bound him in front of their face.
Yeah.
So that means he was chained, but he was in the house.
I think he's in the dungeon.
I think they probably had, those foot manacles to prevent you from running on him. So that way he could, shuffle around, but then couldn't get away.
So he has to keep Simeon there, and he's so sad. Like, he weeps. Joseph has such great character, and he's so compassionate, and he just weeps. But he needs to find out their characters, so he sends them back, and they eventually come back. And said they delayed going back and left Simeon there in Egypt. Jacob was mad because Joseph wanted Benjamin brought to him. Joseph asked the brothers about their dad and youngest brother, so they were like, so Jacob's like, how do you even know about us? And he's like, they were like, he keeps asking. We don't know why, but he's asked, and we didn't know, so we
were going to do? Not tell the dude that gives us food?
Our father is still alive, and yes, we have a younger brother. And they still, to this time, don't know why he's asking these very personal questions. So they took to Joseph, when they went back, they're trying to bribe him, oh my gosh, we're going to take you some balsam, some honey, some aromatic gum, some resin, and twice the silver. Because remember, he's put their money that they brought to pay for their grain back in their bags. Mm-hmm. So they're like...
And the steward, I love the steward's response when they come up to him and say, hey, look, we found this money back in our bag. And the steward of Joseph's like, oh, your God has put a gift for you in your bag. My master already received his money.
I don't know.
That's what he said, though.
Yeah, but I'd be scared of that. So he's
the steward of Joseph says...
Did Joseph tell him to say that? Because I'm guessing.
Either that or the steward's just in on it in the first place. He knows what's going on.
Yeah, and so they're on these donkeys, and they've got these bags, and Joseph just has his servants put that money back in there. You know, when they open that bag, they're like, I'm just not even going back there because I'm going to be dead. I just came back with his grain and his silver. But they have to go back, otherwise their dad and Benjamin will die too because they're starving to death. And so... Joseph, they get to the house. They bow down to him. He asks if his elderly father, he doesn't say it's his father, but asks if
is your father still alive?
Their elderly father's still alive, and they say he is. And they kneel before him just like his dream said. And he loses it and goes in the inner room so he can weep. It's really so sad.
When he sees Benjamin.
Yeah. I mean, it's just so sad that, it overtakes him. Oh my gosh, there's my brother. And so he washes his face and he comes out, gains his composure, and eats with them. And that's when he really wants to test their character, right? Mm-hmm. He's like...
I think he's devising his plan because he doesn't know their character yet, so he's like, I'm going to keep Benjamin with me. Because I don't want him to grow up with them.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't think about that.
Because he's trying to get Benjamin to stay with him. You notice that? It's like, all right, only this guy will be my slave. So he's trying to keep Benjamin with him.
I love the fact that he seats them according to their age.
Mm-hmm. And they are astounded by this.
Yeah, because they're like, how did he know that?
Our age? Yeah. We didn't say that.
Because they're probably born within a year or two of each. Mm-hmm. They probably all look about the same age. And then he seats them according to age. And with going from the oldest to the youngest, and they're just like, what? Then they all get drunk together. Mm-hmm. And Joseph tells them to fill the bags with as much food as they can carry, and each one put the silver on the top of the bag. But then he wants that cup put in Benjamin's. And then when they get about halfway out of town, or get out of town, he sends his servant to find this cup. And what does he say that's going to happen then?
Well, they say, hey, you can kill that dude and the rest of us will be slaves. Yeah. And he's like, no. Just the one who has it will be the slave.
Yep. And we know that would have been Benjamin's bag, so they rip their clothes. They're distraught.
They don't leave Benjamin. They go back to the city to try to solve this.
Yeah. They prove that they're not willing to give him up. And not even because they love him, because you know that Jacob has showed the same kind of treatment to Benjamin as he did Joseph. Actually, he probably was worse, because now he just has one son he loves, but but they love him, and they don't want him to be grieved.
So yeah, Judah, he offers himself, just like he had made the oath with his dad, to make sure that Benjamin would get home. And so I think he does that out of love for his father, as we see here where he's very grieved. He couldn't stand the grief that would come to his father, but also, like, how could you see that done to your brother again after you did it to your other brothers? So yeah, it's all that stuff that goes on there.
So Joseph wept so loud that the Egyptians heard him, and also Pharaoh's household heard him. It's so sad. Mm-hmm. It had been 22 years since he had seen his brothers and father. So he lets them know who he is by this point, and his brothers are terrified. They're like, he's alive. He is the second in command of all of Egypt. He is going to kill us. Mm-hmm. And the famine's been going on for 2 years by this point, so they've got 5 more years. They are not going to make it. They are terrified. But Jacob, he cries for them. He hugs them. He loves them. He missed them. So he tells them that he means them no harm, that what they planned for bad, God did for good, used for good. And he tells them to go back and get Jacob and bring him there, and that they can live there in the land of Goshen. And Pharaoh, he promises that Pharaoh will give Jacob and his brothers the best of the land of Egypt. And then Pharaoh gives them wagons and provisions to go and get Jacob. And he gives his brothers changes of clothes, but he gives Ben 300 pieces of silver and 5 changes of clothes. And then they all talk, which was sweet, because they're probably like, oh my gosh, this is what's been going on in my life, and Joseph's like, this is what's been going on in my life. So it's just.
And Dan's like, look at my one son.
Yeah. So it says Joseph kissed each of his brothers. They wept, and he and Ben hugged and wept. Like.
He hadn't seen his younger brother in a long time. His younger brother's probably a young man, like a grown-up man now with his own family.
So then Jacob and all his descendants, which equals 70 people, moved to Egypt, or the land of Goshen. And here's my question that I had not asked you before yet. It talks about how the shepherds were detestable to the Egyptians. Why?
That's something I didn't know. I think it must have just had to been due to
Were
some of their
Egyptians
practices.
carnivores?
Yes, ma'am.
Or vegetarians?
He puts them in charge of his flocks. He says, if you have any of your best men, put them in charge of my flock.
Yeah, but my commentary said that they were vegetarians, and they would not be around livestock like that.
I don't think so. I think that they just consider that a dirty job. Huh. Because Pharaoh has his own flock and cattle. He says, choose some of your best men and put them in charge of my flock. Which means he has a flock. He has cattle. It's just they don't take care of them. They have people who aren't Egyptians take care of them. Because it's like a dirty job. So it's detestable to them. That's
not what my commentary said. I wonder why they think they're detestable. Because twice it's mentioned that you need to make sure that when you're standing in front of Pharaoh, you tell him that we've been doing this our whole lives. Because shepherds are detestable to
he wanted to make sure that they got their own land.
Well, yeah.
in that area.
But he wanted them to hurry up and sugarcoat it because they would be looked upon as detestable.
And yet Pharaoh asks, hey, look, just put some of your best men in charge of my cattle too. He says that.
Yeah, I don't know if that's what he meant exactly, though. So Jacob and Joseph's brothers moved to the land of Goshen. They're shepherds, and Jacob goes and blesses Pharaoh, and Joseph provides them with food through the next years of the famine. Jacob is 130 years old when he moves to Egypt. And he lives there for 17 years, and he dies at 147, and 147 years old. And like we've talked about before, the way they did oaths back then is just so funny to me, how they put their hand under their thigh.
Yeah. Also, the reference I was talking about is in verse 6, where it says, they can live in the land of Goshen. If you know of any capable men among them, put them in charge of my livestock.
Okay.
So they have their own livestock. They just don't take
understand
care of it.
why that shepherds are detestable to them.
Well, it's like a dirty job. You're taking care of animals all the time.
So they think they're above them. So shepherds are like a lowly
Maybe
job.
also it could have to do with their ritual practices. Maybe they had issues with their own ritual practices, or maybe because of religious significance. There could be a lot of things. I didn't actually look into that too much, but I did think about that. I should have looked into it more. But the hand under the thigh thing is actually very interesting because it's close to your genitals, and so it is symbolic of making a vow or an oath about the family line, about the family. So when you do that, you would put your hand on their thigh to show the seriousness of it and what it's connected to.
So, it goes on to talk about how impressive the procession to bury Jacob was, and how all of the higher-up Egyptians, besides Pharaoh, went and followed Joseph to bury Jacob all the way to the land of Canaan. Oh, I don't know if they went all the way into the land of Canaan, but they followed Jacob. And it says that Abraham, Sarah, Isaac, Rebekah, Jacob, and Leah were all buried there on that property. And the Egyptians took 40 days to embalm Jacob, and they mourned for 70 days for him. Joseph lived 110 years, and then he told his brothers to carry his bones out of Egypt, I guess back to Canaan, to bury him.
And he knew God would deliver them from that land one day.
Back to Canaan.
Back to Canaan. And he's like, so you got to make sure you do that. And then we see in the Exodus, when they go back to the land, the people of Israel are carrying Joseph's bones to bury him.
Yeah, he was embalmed and placed in a coffin while he was in Egypt. And then they carried that.
And it would have been about 210 years from his death to their Exodus.
Well, then it wasn't his brothers that carried him out, was it?
Correct. He was telling their brothers,
Whoever's still alive.
basically, whoever's still alive needs to take him back.
So it was 210 years?
Yes, ma'am. It could have been 210. It could have been 430. Those are the two estimates, and they're based off of calculating things differently. If you calculate as soon as
210 to 430 years till what?
the Exodus.
Till they went to...
The Exodus. Till the Exodus, when they leave Egypt. And it's based off of either from the top. Do we count when Abraham was in the land as a foreigner, as when God gave that promise, like right after God gave that promise, where he said your people will be foreigners in this land, and then they'll be enslaved, and then this will happen? Or do we count as soon as they come to Egypt? If you count as soon as they go into the land, it would be 210. If you count as soon as they get enslaved or go into Egypt, it'd be 430. But either way, he's making sure that people know, you need to take me back. And so
I'm not buried
they
here
pass
in
it down.
Egypt with
They
all
pass
the
it down
Egyptians.
orally over time in their stories of their people, and they remember to take them back.
So they're going to go right back after the Exodus. They're going to go right back to where they're all from.
Canaan.
Yeah, but I guess by that point nobody is still alive that from when they first came to Egypt.
Correct. I mean,
I was
with their
thinking,
long
how did they
lifespans,
not know how to get back there? But
it would only have been, with their long lifespans, there would have been about 2 or 3 generations before you got 210 years. 4 or 5 if you're going to do 430. So, like my great-great-great-great-granddad said, God said's going to come and visit us one day and save us. They would have passed that. That would have been such a historical moment for them, too. That's their people. That they would have cherished that in their memories. And they didn't have a lot to do, so they would just, this would have been their history that they passed down. It's amazing.
well, and that was week 3, and so next we'll go into week 4 next week, which will be about Job, which is my favorite book of the Bible. It really makes you thankful for your life and makes you realize that we don't always get the answers of why something happened. We just have to trust God because there's a battle going on at all times. But yeah, I love Job. So thank y'all so much for joining us. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe if you haven't, and comment and share these videos. That will really help us grow our channel. And we are doing a giveaway this week of what I call a bodacious set. It's got a bow cup, a bow sticker, a bow bracelet set, and a bow charm for either a phone or a backpack. So just get entered in that, and we'll do the drawing on Saturday.
Also, if you have any questions that you would like us to answer, please feel free to put them in the comments below. We'll look through them and try to solve them or answer them for you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Love you guys. Bye.